What's going on, guys? Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting with the People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione. We've got Jared on the line today. How you doing?
Going on, John?
Yeah, we've crossed paths a few times, at some of our the local meets and stuff, and over the years, we've been kind of, chatting here and there, and I think the first time we probably met in person, I think we had some of our para athletes kind of come down and compete, and so that was kind of cool. And most recently, we'll kind of get into you had a big powerlifting event, which was really exciting. But before we get into all that, just tell us a little about yourself. Who you are, what you got going on, how you got into lifting.
Sure, sure. So I'm Jared Simmons. I am founder, I guess, and along with my wife Shira, as co-founder of the platform, and I also am the head coach at Platform Ready Powerlifting. The platform is something that I formed just about 2 years ago. That is, it's meant to advocate for and bring awareness to and help adaptive athletes across not just powerlifting but across all strength sports, help them find their way to platforms, stages, and fields of competition. It's something we work with the federations in order to basically try to link, the athlete and the federation up so that they can both, have fair, strict, challenging, and, and open competition for everyone. So that's the biggest thing right now that I guess I've been doing within powerlifting. But within powerlifting itself, I've been lifting for about 20 years. I started. I'm 45 right now. I started back in the early 2000s, um, doing bench only meets. After I had some big changes in my life. Before I even hit 21, I was 20 years old and decided to get sober because I was kind of just a mess coming out of high school. I'm from a small Midwest farm town. There's not a whole lot to do, for a young man my age, except basically either play football, work the fields, and then go to the bars. And I was really good at working the fields and going to the bars. So, um, but once I decided to get sober, just because my life was a wreck, I tell everybody this when they ask what got you into it. And this is going to sound so fucking lame. I was walking through a Barnes and Noble one day, and I was really struggling because I mean, I'm newly sober. I knew I couldn't go to the bars and have fun, so I was like, what am I going to do? I was like, I'm bored. I feel lame. I need to get some excitement. What am I going to do? And I was walking by the rack of magazines, and there was a Flex magazine, and it had Triple H on the cover, and he's just stacked, just yoked. I think he's got a sledgehammer in hand, and I'm like, I don't know what the deal is here, but that's what I want. And just strength is the first thing that kind of rang through my mind, and I've been chasing it ever since. Um, so bench only meets were the big thing back then. Uh, Kind of had some times in and out over the course of in my early 20s to now where I am, mid 40s. Um, where I was, also kind of back and forth. I went back out to the bars. I started drinking again. Got in a band, was working at a tattoo shop, started doing stand up comedy, moved out to Vegas, lived with Vinnie Paul from Pantera. Thought life was crazy and great then. Came back here to Iowa to help my friend open a second tattoo shop and happened to meet who is now the mother of my two girls. And we hit it off pretty hard and fast and quick. Found out we were gonna have a girl, or found out we were gonna have a baby within about a month of us dating each other. So that kind of slowed me down. That put me back here in Iowa. I've got two amazing kids now. Shira and I are married. Um, and here I am now competing. Actually, when I came back to powerlifting after it was bench only meets, I come back to powerlifting after this whole raw revolution happened.
Hmm.
And I was kind of like, I was like, what is this? I go, this is because one thing I never really liked, I was a raw bencher, which was really like rare and hard to find. Back everybody's telling me, you need to put this shirt on. You need to put this shirt on. But I would never train in the shirt. And they never had me train in the shirt. But then come competition day, they're like, oh yeah, put this shirt on. And I did horrible. So I was always a raw bencher going up against all these guys in shirts, and I would just clean the floor because I'd go and win every meet. Well, then finally I come back to powerlifting. I'm like, yes, this is how it's supposed to be. And it's nothing against Equip because I have single ply gear. I'll get into it probably eventually here. I do love the challenge of it, but I came back after this whole Raw Revolution or whatever the fuck it is, and I've been here ever since. I've been competing now at this level for about 10 years.
Yeah, so just kind of curious again for those that are maybe like listening, just for like yourself, have you I guess when you started training, especially for like full power, but even for bench only too, in terms of like just kind of getting around equipment and stuff, did you have any, I guess, like did you have to do anything creative to like squat? Do you have to do anything creative to like set up for like, set
Um,
blocks for for bench and stuff? Just like any kind of, I guess, challenges that you kind of encountered that you had to kind of get creative with your own training and some solutions for that.
yeah, I mean, I guess it does. The camera doesn't show it. I'm 4'6". I have dwarfism, which is achondroplasia, which is the most common form of dwarfism. Luckily, mine's not as severe as some others. But yeah, I totally had to. I had to act. I was by adapting or by learning new styles of training based on my height. I think that's what actually got me into powerlifting. Because at first, when I really got into lifting again, I was just at the Y. So I was in like Cybex power racks. So you can adjust those. I was like walking out, with really shitty bars, the weight. So I didn't really have to adapt too much there. Um, I didn't know at all how to really bench again, because I was always just a, no leg drive, feet up bencher. Even the bench only meets that I did, they were so unregulated. There were really no rule. It was just, hey, just press it, and get it. So I never really had trained anything with leg drive. Um, or I would go over and I'd be on the Cybex or the hammer strength machines. And as I started getting stronger, I started realizing I was plateauing and hitting, and my strength was handicapped because I was relying on machines that weren't built for me. I have always said I don't think adaptive should be on. The only machine maybe adaptive should ever be on is maybe either a hack squat or the cables. That's it. I don't think any other. I think all other machines are a waste of time. Um, so I left the Y and I joined. It was called Quad City Barbell or QC Barbell. It was a strongman powerlifting gym, and I started to actually learn from there. Uh, what's a monolift? What's a competition bench? What's a combo rack? All this stuff. And I started training actually the lifts correctly. Now I don't, because my dwarfism isn't as severe as others. I'm very fortunate in the fact that really all I needed was to build some blocks for the bench to put my feet on. And when I'm under a mono, most monos the hooks don't drop low enough, so I built up a pretty hefty platform that if even Dan Bell wanted to squat on this platform, it would work for him. It's a beast, but it fills the whole basically inside of the mono. So it just basically is almost like an insert for most monos. But that's really about it. Um, everything else that I've ever run into within competition has all been has been fine. It's been fine for me to work and compete on.
And then I guess it seems like you kind of, and I think also too is kind of maybe the era that like, my generation, your generation and beyond kind of grew up. I think there's a lot of more trial and error going on. There wasn't as many like resources. So I guess when you were kind of coming up and trying to, I guess, learn and improve your techniques when you were getting a little bit more serious and kind of getting back, now like Raw was more prominent, where were you, I guess, trying to seek out maybe information in terms of like just to improve like your
I had
own
an
preparation and lifting?
So I had a really good coach within QC Barbell that got me. He was a good starter, a good, first time, like a newbie coach. Got me a really good understanding basically of the sport. But that gym ended up having to close up just for other reasons with the ownership. So I was looking for a new gym to go to. And I was recommended to go to this place I'd never heard of. It was a small private powerlifting club called Jebens, which I'm still at. Jebens Powerlifting Club. And guy was there. His name was Matt Berry. Um, he was old school. I mean, this guy's had, I think, been lifting. He would compete at Worlds when he was a teen. Ironically, here I am talking about how I love the Raw Revolution and it worked for me. Matt was a conjugate coach, full conjugate, geared lifter, but conjugate ended up being the best thing that ever happened for me because it's conjugate is so adapt. You can adapt conjugate there's so many different things. Like it literally, like what conjugate is for one person is going to be totally different than it is for another. So I am a very heavily trained conjugate lifter. Now I don't train conjugate. Now it's one of the methods that my coach has me doing, but um, especially for adaptives that are under the platform, and even some of my Gen Pop, some of those conjugate seems to work really well for us. So
Awesome. So when did you, I guess, start to transition to saying, okay, you're kind of, I guess it sounded like, to me, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You can kind of correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but so it seemed like, strength training, powerlifting, competing kind of gave you like a really positive like outlet for yourself. And that was, it seems like that was something you were really kind of taken on to. When did you want to start to say, hey, I'm really like, this is a big part of my life. I want to start to kind of help others and maybe like in a coaching capacity. I know we're going to talk about uh,
mhm.
your meet directing and kind of what you're doing with that. But when did you want to decide that you were going to help others?
um, it was kind of forced on me. I was fired by my coach about 2 years. He had some things going on where his roster was just getting too big, and he kind of pulled me aside one day and just said, and I because I was in prep for it was for Iron Rebellion and for at Surge for 2023. Right, 2023. Yeah. Uh, and so it was like we had just put that on our radar. So this was in 20, like this was before that. Yeah, he pulled me aside one day and just said, "Hey, I'm gonna have to let you go. But he goes, but here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna continue to help you and advise you. He goes, but I'm also gonna let one other guy go, which was my training partner. And my training partner is 6'5". He's a former strongman. So I think at the time John was 380 pounds, maybe pushing 400. He goes, you're gonna take him too, and he's gonna be your first client. You're gonna get because he was doing the meet too. So you have the shortest guy in the gym and the biggest guy in the gym, both based. I'm just taking over and doing programming and some coaching for him. Um, at the time, I never had planned on being a coach. I didn't think I was capable of it. I didn't have the confidence in myself. I didn't think I had the ability. I didn't think anyone would even want to be coached by some short dude that comes walking in that's got a really good, really good squat, really good bench, really shitty dead. Like, why would anyone want to be coached by me? I'm not an influencer. I think at the time I was thinking only the influencers can be coaches. And so we go through this prep. We both do really well. I coach myself. I designed my own program. I have him following something close to it that matched up for him. We both set all-time totals for us. Each of us get meet PRs, have our best meets to date, and I continue to go right into it. Um, so I kind of knew. I was like, okay, maybe I can do this coaching thing, but I still kept it really small. I wasn't putting myself out there like, hey, DM me for coaching. I just kind of took it as it all came. And I think that's been up until about this last year. That's kind of been why it's developed the way it has. And I've taken my time. I've taken my time and been very patient on how I learn my philosophy and how I want to work with others. And I was also the thing about our gym, about Jebin's powerlifting is that the guy that's got 6 plates on the bench, is benching 6 plates, is going to be right next to somebody that's on the next bench over. They might have quarters on there because they're just learning how to bench, and they have no idea what's going on, and they're not even thinking about competing. But we're all training together. Everybody's working to get strong. So that guy, he'll rep out his 6 plates, and then he gets right up, hands off the 95 pounds, and is right there spotting and giving pointers. I've had a lot of not just knowledge and experience freely given to me by people way better in this sport than I am. Like, I mean, that's why I mentioned Dan Bell. He's one. JB Boss at Cone. Um, you know, people that have been in the sport for a long time that I think want to continue to see it grow. What they've done to help me is the only thing they've ever asked of me is you do the same for someone you run into them. That's all I try to do. I just try to continue to pass it on.
No, I think that's great. I think it's just it's great to see, and I think that like sometimes, especially with social media, sometimes it could be really it could be kind of confusing maybe for people navigating it, whether you are a coach or an athlete. Sometimes our perspective can get like twisted with like what's good? Am I worthy? Should I even be,
Oh,
should I even bother? You know?
totally. I think perspective gets very easily skewed on social media. I think people put too much emphasis on what other people think or are going to think of them rather than valuing just their own integrity, their own, their own values, put place in their own values, their own sense of peace and happiness, and their own goals first before putting others in front of it. So yeah,
Yeah, and I think like, potentially, maybe, and I'm not sure if there was some other people maybe like, but anyways, maybe if I was somebody maybe that, maybe was built like you, I know it would be kind of comforting to kind of see, okay, well, if Jared's doing this, then maybe I could do this too. And like I said, so kind of going into like the meet, uh, was it Power Monsters? What was the actual meet called?
it was UFPC. It was Monsters Power because
Monsters
Monsters meant
Power.
barbell put it on. So Monsters Power was the open full meet itself, but then it was also combined with Paranats because
Power Nationals.
this was open to everyone. We had people from all across the country coming in for this to actually essentially do the first time ever a national para or adaptive meet. So it was labeled as Paranats, but we're really trying to stress that it was adaptive and para lifters together.
Yeah, so for people that may be like unfamiliar, like as far as because I know even some I have like a lot of experience and sometimes I kind of maybe say the wrong terms and stuff. So what would you, in your like explanation, like what is an adaptive athlete to you? What is a power athlete to you? If you can kind of explain for those people that
Yeah,
are maybe unfamiliar.
um, it is because it's a hard thing to necessarily define and kind of put into one box. But adaptive, the way that we at the platform, um, the way we describe it is going to be someone with either an apparent or non-apparent physical, either condition, limitation, handicap, or also something that could be mental, emotional, psychological. We have some lifters that we've helped, that we've advised along the way, that have PTSD.
Mm.
We have lifters that, if you saw like just me sitting right here, on the camera, you would never know, that anything's going on with them. But as soon as they get up and move, you see, oh, they have spina bifida or cerebral palsy. We have lifters that are amputees, um, cancer, people recovering from massive changes from cancer. Um, let's see what else. I mean, obviously, then people like me, short stature or with dwarfism. Um, there's also just sometimes you have lifters that you either been in the sport for a long time, or your job itself maybe beats you up over the course of years, and you've developed carpal tunnel,
Yeah.
and you can move stuff, but you can't hold on to anything at all. So you need like some type of a device, a strap, or anything like that. So basically, it's an individual case by case basis, but that's adaptive. Um, Ultimately, though, with anything adaptive or para, the one thing is that we always try to make sure that say in powerlifting, the integrity of whatever lift or competition that you're doing, the integrity of that event is kept in place. So you still got to be able to press a bench. You still got to be able to squat a bar. You got to be able to lift a deadlift. Um, so when it comes to like para, because you were asking what the difference is. But para, there is a difference between adaptive and para. Para is actually more literally. It says it in same. It's more of the paralyzed uh, sport or the paralyzed athlete. I've seen. I have actually seen archery competition, um, para archery for someone still paralyzed from the neck down because they
Wow.
can still pull and release with their mouth. But in most cases, like you brought, when we first met, you brought Big Chris down, and he's below the waist, paralyzed, I believe, below the waist, um, and a huge bencher, which required a para bench. There's sometimes some different equipment that's required between para and adaptive, which we ran into. We saw first thing at our meet, and we're able to actually make that a pretty fluid exchange between having a para lifter wheel up and bench, and then all of a sudden switching a bench out to do an adaptive.
Yeah. So, and then for those that are me, again, just to kind of backtrack a little bit in terms of my own experience and kind of when we first met. So, I would say like I haven't seen like a lot of opportunities. This was like a really, especially for full power. I would say like in the past we've seen, like I said, a lot more kind of bench only. Sometimes you see kind of like a chair, like a seated deadlift competition. I've seen kind of that here and there. I've seen, and you can maybe speak about this at some point. I've seen seems like CrossFit and Strongman have started to kind of build out that kind of division as well. But yeah, for powerlifting, it's for like the Team USA powerlifting. It's it's bench only. So they have a bench essentially that you can kind of have your feet up and kind of
Yep.
strap in. And there's certain kind of basically classifications. You have to get classified in order to kind of be eligible to compete. So in that kind of segment of powerlifting, um, you can't have any like upper body amputations and things like that. So like, but in your case, in your the meet that you did, which I thought was really cool, you really kind of open it up almost to anything that like any potential situation. I saw, some people had upper body amputation, some people had lower body amputation, some people might have, like you said, had some cognitive, maybe like cerebral palsy or something like that. You mentioned spina bifida. I mean, it was such like a diverse group
It
of
was a wide.
people.
It was a wide mix. Yeah, it wasn't just
What?
I easy to, especially for and I'll give the spotters and loaders and judges a huge shout. I actually sat in judging it, but I'll give those guys a huge shout because you have these spotters that it's hard enough to run just to judge a full power meet,
Sure.
and I'm looking at these guys like, okay, here's we have this going on with this one, this going on with this one, this going on with this one, and no lifter hit the floor,
Yeah.
no the floor, no one got hurt, everyone completed the meet. It was phenomenal. Like I think it was just because there was the preparation, the communication, but
Yeah.
um,
So
yeah,
I want to make sure that and if there's anything that you want to particularly talk about. So I want to just kind of go through like each event and then also like maybe what your thought process, because I thought I love the idea and I thought it was great in terms of, and it's like one of those things where not to kind of like throw shade or say like, be like the grumpy old man, but one of the things that I've kind of seen with like more modern powerlifting, especially like kind of that teenage junior lifter, in terms of like how they train and stuff, I think people are so caught up with like having to do the lifts like such a specific way. And we kind of talked about conjugate a little bit, and I think that mindset I think is important to be like open to variation. So like if you're not like walking out with a straight bar with knee sleeves and out of a combo rack, then
the
honestly, so
the purists.
yeah, so and that's fine. And I think that like there's plenty of options for those people that want to do that.
Yep,
But I think again, the reason like that this podcast is called Powerlifting for the People, I do believe that maybe not everyone is going to want to try for all-time records and all this stuff, but like everyone could be challenged and like I said, do a competition, have the platform to be able to train for it. And like I said, not everyone has access or some limitations may prevent people from doing a more like traditional kind of meet with a straight bar, like we said. So I thought it was very cool and creative where I was like, oh, they're rotating different bars, they're having certain straps and stuff allowed. So I just wanted to kind of go through what your thought process was like. And then I don't know if you have like certain categories. I know like in Strongman, I think they have like, I'm not sure if you guys did this with awards and records and stuff. They had like different essentially classifications based off um, potentially whatever the handicap or disability might be. So I was just kind of curious. So like for the squat, what were the different, I guess, variations that you offered for the squat, and how did you contest that lift? And then we'll kind of go like lift back because I thought that was very interesting, and I thought it was very well done because it allowed like such a wide, variation of a person to be able to do the meet. So
totally. So within the squad, everything was in a mono. They did have the option of either walking out or going under the hooks. We used there was um a comp bar, F8. Was it the F8 squat bar? No, the squat bar was. It was a rogue. It was a rogue squat bar. So we used a rogue squat bar. We also used a Mars bar, who Mars actually donated two
Great.
full bars that they sponsored, and they were awesome.
So again, for people that aren't, so like, can you just I know describe a little bit like what would the benefit of using like a Mars bar be for an
So
adaptive
with
athlete?
the Mars bar, when you have someone that's adaptive, say that either has lost a limb or possibly has like a neurological disorder where there's going to be a lot of instability. Obviously, being able to have the Mars bar, which is like a super beefed up cambered SSB bar that actually basically has a pad that hooks essentially all the way down. It comes pretty low on me even when I'm on. It'll sit basically like a huge shoulder pad
Sure.
on you. It it allows for the lifter to basically be able, and also it has handles. So a lot of times when you have adapters that can't, or that don't have the arms to hold and lock it in, they can hold the weight right here. It's just more of a stable, more secure setup. We used a spider bar as well too for one of our lifters that had no arms. Raymond, yeah,
Yeah, that was really quite something to see. That was
yeah, no,
really inspiring.
Jeff Maynard had no arm, and he's done that. I've seen him pull before and squat, and yeah, no arms, and gets right under there, and it locked right in perfectly. So, um, for the actual lift itself, there were, for the most part, you had to be able to judge when somebody would be able to hit depth or how they would. Normally a squat's going to be a very tight, narrow profile or whatnot. We had someone that was there that was an above the knee amputee that had to kick their their amputated leg, their prosthetic leg, sat out a lot further. It was
Yeah.
almost like it was when they came down, they were still squatting into it, but it was extended out a lot farther. So the spotters had to be aware of that. We had another lifter with a neuro condition that just balance and stability
Yeah.
is, they, when they move, they are very unstable, but to them they're balanced. They know when, so when they're going down with the squat, they were moving and all over. And you know what? There was up down, but the thing is, once they hit depth, as long as they can still come all the way up without going forward, we had to say I was on her second attempt, second and third, I think, that she went forward. That's when you. That's when we knew, okay, that's a no. And she knew that. She was like, if I can't get up, I'm going forward. That's when it's a no lift. She communicated that to us, and we knew to catch it, and we were right there.
Yeah, and then so I'm just kind of curious, like, and I'm sure like this will evolve. Like this was like the first one in terms of like, so how did you? I guess we'll get to like the. I'm just curious, like how you did like the awards and stuff. I guess
Okay.
when you're done, and then for the bench press, we kind of alluded to a little bit, but sometimes we have some athletes whether there's maybe potentially a spinal cord injury, maybe they're some sort of paraplegic, some sort of paralyzation, maybe there's like you said, sometimes it's a neurological thing. Like people with cerebral palsy, they might their legs might be kind of shaking, they may be off balance. So, what were some of the considerations? And I did see some upper body amputations as well. So, what were some of the modifications for the bench press that you guys had?
So for the modifications for the bench press, we did use a para bench that the comp bench that we were using was an Invictus bench. And I know that initially they were looking at getting just a whole separate para bench made, or having a para bench made. And the meet directors and the director of the federation itself was having some issues with one company to even see if they
Yeah,
could make.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, I know. I go, you're using an Invictus bench. I go, and I know David Shirley. I was like, give me a second. So I reached right out to David and said, hey, got an idea. I think within a matter of like 10 minutes, he was already in touch with, with Monsters. It's like, yeah, I can just make a bolt on. So literally he made, essentially take one bench out, pop this one right in, and it ended up being like a NASCAR pit crew with how quick we were able to
awesome.
change out benches. So yeah, we did, and because we did have one lifter that was a para lifter, and he did bench. So we got that done, but then all the other lifters were on regular benches because that's what they were used to training and doing prep on. Um, so I think adaptation wise, we had one lifter who didn't have use of his left, no, his right arm. He didn't have use of his right arm. So he was a one arm, he literally was a one arm bencher. And he just took it right out, bench, racked it. Another one that was an amputee, so he didn't have an arm at all. He had a device that basically was full prosthetic that had a clamp on it that he was able to then put on the bar. screw
balance.
on the hook, and it worked. Everybody else was basically, two hands on the bar.
Yeah, no, I think it's great to kind of see like the different options there. There was a gentleman, he never ended up competing, but I was working with a gentleman with a cerebral palsy, so he did a lot of the benching on the para. He could kind of like walk with some assistance, so he wasn't like
Yep,
paralyzed or anything. But just so there's like levels to this. I think that's important for people to note. But
there
it
is.
was interesting where one side of his body was a lot more coordinated and strong. So
We
even what he had to do, he had to we kind of figured out that if he benched kind of staggered, then he could be like more balanced like that way. And he was able to go when he first started with me. This was when I was still in Long Island, but he like had trouble balancing a broomstick. But then he got to the point where he was, slowly but surely. I think he got to the point where he was getting close to like benching 100 pounds. He could do like the empty bar for like a set of 20, and um, you could tell like it was kind of cool when he started to fill out his t-shirt a little bit. You can kind of see he was starting to get some shoulders, and so it's just like kind of cool. Like again, it's like he's probably never going to break, you know, any crazy records or anything, but for him to like not being able to like to balance a broomstick to be able to bench 100 pounds, and you could see like even in his physical muscular development that was just he got so much benefit out of it. So I think that was like really cool to kind of see, and yeah, it's just awesome to kind of see what people are capable of when they kind of put their mind to something. So moving on to the deadlift, which I think those are always like the most interesting. How people are strapping in and what people are kind of doing with that. So, what were some of the I guess different setups that you had for the deadlift?
So Jeff, who was using the spider bar because of no arms, he deadlifted and simply just had basically a harness set up where he's able to basically just hook in. He has a harness and strap, hooks right onto the bar. So essentially, he's basically just still deadlifting, just no arms. The strap serves as that. So he was able to, and he completed all three, and he lifted relatively heavy. Yeah, he went pretty heavy. The gentleman James Sturgeon that did the one arm bench and also one arm squat. James also I should say this, six how much 617. Yeah, and he used the straight bar one arm squat of 617 pounds. One arm. So he then turned around and deadlifted. He used a strap for the deadlift just for his one side that didn't have the arm um, use that he could use. Uh, I had a lifter actually in the meet, Rollin Abbott, and Rollin has spina bifida, and he had a custom. It's a beast of a unit that's set up. He has a custom deadlift chair that was set, those welded, and made, and set. So he did seated deads from that, and everybody else just pulled. Are the amputees the above the knee and below the knee amputees that they pulled, just like a normal conventional deadlift, like anyone else would. Um, so yeah, deads. So everything basically everybody was able to compete. Um, yeah, in pretty much everything.
And then how did you I guess do the awards for those divisions? Is just curious like how you can separate it.
Overall, para and adaptive, essentially division all in one. But because in pretty much all lifters' cases, in most of their cases, the integrity of the lifts was able to stay, um, was maintained. A lot of those guys were able to register also in the open. So we had adaptive and paralifters winning awards in both the adaptive divisions and the open divisions in the weight class, second, third. There were enough that were in weight classes that nobody got it. I don't think anybody got any participation trophies. They weren't like the only, the one person in like 148. So you by default get first
Sure,
place.
sure.
There were people getting seconds, thirds, or just at least recognition. Um, there was a overall best. There was a best, in the open, best male, best female, and then there was an overall best adaptive or para lifter. So we did have one, and Arlen ended up winning that based off of Wilk. We were able to base it basically off of Wilk's, just a pure score on that, and she was able to win that because she competed adaptive full power.
Yeah, I know. I think I guess is the live stream still up on YouTube somewhere
I
or
believe should still be.
yeah. I'll see
Uh,
if I'll see if I could find. I think it might have been on the gym's channel because I'll if I could find it, I'll link it. But
Yep.
I think it's good for people to kind of see it. So we had I'm not sure if you ever got connected or met Garrison, but anyways, the first guy that I kind of trained, Garrison Red, ended up doing really well. He's still kind of lifting, um, and he's also does a lot of speaking and motivational speaking, and he does a lot of he's like an advocate for wheelchair users and kind of like how to be more independent and stuff. And I think it's just really cool to see like what people are capable of because anyways, his quick story. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but Garrison was a great football player in Brooklyn. He ended up just kind of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He ended up getting shot. Now paralyzed, and he's a really great example. He tried doing some wheelchair track, and eventually he kind of found Gaglione strength in Farmingdale, and he's done amazing things. I think he still has like the adaptive record for RPS. He did like a 290 something at like 123 was like his best. I mean, it was pretty crazy. Um, and at the same meet, actually, I don't know if you ever met Nick Benarakis, Bench and Benny. So we had Garrison uh, hit it like a 290 at 123, and then Benny, you know, ended up had his best multiply bench like 820 that day. So it's just really cool to see like the contrast of like, like an able-bodied lifter and like and multiply and like kind of like the one extreme, and then you had this other guy who, um, it's like we're really not really sure like if he's going to be able to have control and all this stuff, and he had like a massive, well over double body weight bench, and he's competed internationally and stuff, and he's taken it really far. But it's one of those things, it's like he could have felt like sorry for himself, or I don't know if I could do this, or and he just kind of did the best he could, and he's had some great results, and it's been a big part of his life over the years. Now he does a lot of motivational speaking and kind of shows a lot of wheelchair users like what's you're capable of if you're stronger, and having strength really
Yeah.
helps him in his everyday life be more independent. So it's not even just about like competition for competition's sake, but it's what it does for your mental, um, your mental confidence. So I think it's just really good what you're doing because I think the more people can, it's just even like with women, like we didn't, in the early 2000s, we didn't see a lot of women compete. Now, some of these meets, they have all women's meets. Sometimes the meets are 50% or more women. So when we kind of see others like ourselves, um, we're kind of more encouraged to kind of see like what's possible. So I think it's amazing what you're doing. So just before we kind of close out, I'm just kind of curious, you know, I want to kind of get some advice for maybe some if there's any adaptive athletes that are listening, or maybe someone knows someone. But what are your kind of goals with like the meet, and like what would you like to kind of see like moving forward in terms of like the growth of it? And I guess if you have any goal, I don't know if I know it's still early on, but like what would be like kind of if you could wave a magic wand, what would you like to see happen with like that with that power meet?
Well, I know for a fact. I know Monsters, Power, and Para Adaptive Nats 2 is happening.
Awesome.
That was like within minutes of the meet wrapping up. It's already locked in, confirmed. It's happening. So we'd like to see this obviously be, an annual meet going on for year after year after year, and continue to grow. We had it was eight adaptive lifters. So it sounds like a low turnout, but the fact we had people coming from North Dakota and Arizona traveling for this tells me
Yeah.
it's. Oh, and I think we needed the first one to go off successfully, which I think this went off even better than I could have planned. Um, next year I'd like to see 25 adaptive or para athletes. I think the gym Monsters is an awesome facility. It's a perfect place to host it. I think we need to continue to have federations that are able and willing to communicate and work
Yeah.
with lifters, and not really talk about it. It's easy to say we're here for the lifter. We
Yep.
But when it comes to really putting that work into action or those words into action, it just it falls to the wayside, because it's not necessarily the big glamorous thing of where you're going to have a smoke show and flamethrowers and stuff maybe going off.
Right.
Maybe that's not what's needed. We're actually just celebrating the lift itself. Maybe there's not going to be banners up on the wall, showing who did what at that gym for this meet. But I think it's more about just recognizing the challenge that those lifters face. we do have a lot of people that are supportive and pushing behind it. And I mean, this was the goal. If you asked me 2 years ago when I founded the platform, if we'd already be at this point doing something like this, I would have said no way. I would have never pictured something like this. I thought there was going to be a lot more of a fight to even be able to get anyone just to hear me out. And I was approached. This was brought to me. The idea of Paranats was not mine. I was approached and just asked to be an advisor and to help run it and set up and see what we could do. So I know it's out there. I know there are others that want to get this done. And I think working with, like I said, Johnny, with the USPC, Star and Jason were big behind it too. Clayton, um, and there are other feds outside, and I think that we'll have the ability for feds to actually work together on this. I think we were kind of talking about that. So there are federations that are, I think, very like-minded and have, truly do have what's best for the lifter, whatever walk of life you are, or even not walk. If you can't even walk of life, they want the best for the lifter themselves. I've seen that. I think RPS is a good example of that. I do think USPC is a good example of that. I think UPA is a good example of that. And I think a lot of them are starting to work together to figure out, what we can do.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate a couple of things. So, like, depending on, like, again, who's listening to this, if you're a lifter, if potentially maybe you're a judge in a certain federation, maybe you are, um, um, trying to think of other scenarios, a meet director. Um, I think it's just important that we're like open-minded because I think, at least from what I've seen since powerlifting, it's great that powerlifting has grown, but I definitely see that it's the growth and the popularity is really kind of almost been really just favoring like one type of lifter. And I think that, again, just calling a spade, it's,
Yep.
a combo rack, walked out, drug tested, super strict. And that's kind of like the most accessible. And unfortunately, there's a group of, whether it's 8 people, I think that sometimes, unfortunately, some of these things it comes down to money, it comes down to dollars and
Yep.
cents. And again, if this is a minority of people, but again, in my view, and one of the things that I try to advocate for is providing a platform that is accessible to as many people as possible. So like the RPS having like an adaptive division, and like, like I talked about with Garrison. So like, with someone like him, it's like, yeah, maybe an able-bodied lifter is not going to like strap themselves to the bench or whatever, or like, so like I think that sometimes you just got to be open-minded to, like you were saying, like keeping the integrity of the rules. I forget how you like worded it, but
The integrity of the lift.
you
Keep
keep the integrity of the lift. So like if someone like doesn't have like use of their legs or like an arm or whatever the case may be, it's like sure, like they might have a prosthetic or whatever, but it's like we're providing an opportunity for that person to do the lift, according to the rules. And sure,
Mhm.
you can kind of argue like, isn't it an advantage? It's like you can kind of argue a lot of different things, but I think that sometimes it's like it's important that we have a platform and we have a place for everybody to showcase their strength. And I think that when it comes to powerlifting, it's really just an avenue for like just self growth and challenge for people. And I think sometimes we get too caught up with like these minor details, like did you walk your squat out? Does your underwear have legs? It's just like the really stupid stuff that really doesn't like matter at like the end of the day.
Does your wrist wrap have thumb loops?
Yeah, like it's just like it doesn't like it's like we're like really not like we're not like we're kind of missing the plot, as I think that's what some of the young kids say now. But anyways, I really appreciate what you're doing. It's something where like I wish I could be more involved. I haven't been as involved in the last couple of years just because of all the different obligations I have. But I do try to support. I do, like I said, a lot of times people will say, "Yeah, we're for the lifters, whatever." But I do try to, do our best to be accommodating, and that's why I think even just something like using a monolift. If you want to walk out, great. If you want to, just like providing different options for people, because again, not everyone is kind of is given the same like hand, but you can only control what you can control, but it's not like necessarily the hand you're dealt, it's how you play your card. So I think in the case of like when it comes to adaptive lifting and powerlifting, be open-minded. There's a lot of creativity. So with that being said, if maybe someone is listening to this, they know someone, maybe they have a disability, a spinal cord injury, some sort of cognitive or physical disability, what advice do you have someone that's maybe starting out in powerlifting? In that case, maybe they're not sure if they're physically capable, what's advice for someone in that case where if they're not really sure like where to start?
I would tell them they're definitely capable because they have the same worries and fears and concerns as any other lifter that has walked into that gym. Because I've asked plenty of able-bodied, 6'5" tall, 300-pound dudes, "Hey, when are you going to compete?" And you know what the answer always is? "Oh, I'm not strong enough yet to compete." That's what it always. Everybody always thinks they're not strong enough to compete. You're ready to go. You can compete. I would say like definitely reach out though if you are an adaptive or a para athlete, or just new into the sport. Reach out, talk to people at your gym that have lifted. Find a coach. Find someone that a coach that also has experience working with other adaptive lifters. Don't just sign up with whoever the flash in the pan, flavor of the month is. Um, do your research. So do your research. Look into federations. Find what you like. Find what works for you. You can always, of course, reach out to me, or Shira. We're both, with running the platform. That's what we are here for. My Instagram is the platform AO. Um, Reach out to you. Reach out to John. I mean, that's when Shira told me. I'd known of you for a long time, long before I met Shira. But then when I was with Sharon, she's like, "Yeah, John's usually out at our meets and doing this." And then she mentioned, she goes, "Well, he does a lot of stuff with Parent." And I was like, and that was always a good thing. And I was like, well, then I've got somebody that I can bounce things off of, that I can,
Sure.
somebody that is knowledgeable, that is in the sport, that, has, a good reputation and some integrity behind them, rather than just, wondering, who else is going to understand if I have a question or frustrated, who's going to understand where I'm coming from on this. So,
Yeah, and I'll just say too, kind of coming full circle, what you were saying, you were saying when you were starting out, you weren't sure like if coaching was going to be like in your future or if you could do that. I do think it's like important that like you like walk the walk and you definitely understand like more than anyone like okay like if you have like I said if you're like I said if someone else like I said, is kind of built like you or has similar kind of potential limitations or whatever. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes people like think like, oh, should I think that? It's like, but whatever the case may be, that you are living it like day to day, so you kind of understand what the person's going through. A lot of people may or may not know this, or I'm not even sure if maybe Shira knows this or not. Or so before I kind of did my up until 2014. So like my master's is in special education. So even like so while I was kind of training, I was started out training strength and conditioning for wrestling, and I was kind of doing powerlifting. So it wasn't until like 2011, 2012, where kind of coaching like powerlifting for just powerlifting sake was kind of like really in my repertoire. But up until that point, I was working with a lot of students with like autism, developmental disorders, emotionally disturbed. So that was kind of always that's kind of like I always had that kind of experience. And I think that like really helped me like as a coach. A lot of people don't know like kind of that background side of things. And then like I said, meeting Garrison, I think was probably a little bit later on, maybe 2016, 2017. And I do think it's like really important to have someone that has experience kind of working with those populations and getting firsthand knowledge and kind of having conversations. And like a lot of things, there are we do have a lot of resources on our YouTube. I think definitely gonna whether it's a consultation or getting to rub elbows with someone like yourself in person. But I definitely highly recommend. I'm not sure if you guys are going to do this meet in the summer again or not, but definitely, give Jared a follow. I'll include links for like where to follow and definitely like the meet itself because I thought it was really great to see, and I think that it's just nice to see like a meet like that that's like again so accessible to so many people. So I definitely my hats off to you. I'm glad it's like I said. I know it's been like I know you've been kind of this has been like a long time thing in the works, and definitely wish you continued success. And I hope that it keeps growing and
thank you.
definitely get the word out and keep because I think it's great. I think this is like more. Like you said, a lot of people get like really caught up with like the smoke screen, the fireworks and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just about the experience of like challenging yourself. And like you said, it's the lifting itself is really what makes the experience. The other stuff is nice to have,
Yeah.
and that's great. And maybe that stuff will come in time, but I don't think that's like the people that have been doing this for a really long time for decades. It's that's not why like you're doing this, and the experiences you have with people and kind of the memories when you kind of like you said, I'm sure like there was some really kind of gutsy performances that like those lifters will never forget. Especially if it was like their first time. So, anyways, I can kind of go on and on. But
Same.
I want to be
Yep.
mindful of your time. Any like final words or where can people find you? if they want to learn more about or need
Biggest
what you do.
place you can find me easily and the quickest is I do everything through Instagram. That's basically going to probably be where you can reach out to me. Again, the platform AO. Any questions? Um, Trust me, if there's no dumb question, uh, there's not. I'd rather if somebody is curious about something, I'd rather they ask rather than just assuming and trying to put it out on the platform because we have had that happen before. Um, but you can reach me there. The gym I train at, Jevons Powerlifting Club in Davenport, Iowa. We also do travel quite a bit. We're always down at Elite FTS, who is a big supporter of everything that we do. And then we are out east, obviously between Power Build, Death Wish, and Stable Goat in Philly is where you can find us as well there too. So yeah, just reach out. Like I said, I hope to see there is going to be number two next year. I believe probably around this same time. It seems to work well around end of August, beginning of September for this meet to happen. So I will be posting the updates to that as soon as I get them. But it is happening.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well, definitely. Like I said, I'm real excited to give Jared a follow and definitely check out the event. Like I said, I'll include links in the description because, like I said, I think it's really important that kind of people see it, and especially if you're someone that maybe kind of falls in that category. But yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate again. Like I said, I really think that it's important that we make the sport and strength training accessible to everyone. So again, hats off to you because you definitely are doing that. So if you guys enjoyed the podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Please share it. Helps other people find us. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.